They arrived with hymnals and hope, and left only echoes behind. From 1963 to 1977, something ancient spoke through stone, and only the mad understood it. 241 souls lost. No bodies, no cause, just a voice that never matched any tongue on earth. It was meant to be a retreat for silent prayer, but the silence began to speak back. They called it St. Ioseph's Ridge, but there was no church there. Not yet. In the winter of 1962, the Remung Diocese of Burlington approved construction for a new monastic retreat. They wanted isolation, silence, something untouched. They chose the quarry, not for beauty, but for obedience. The land had no history, no property deeds, no nearby towns. It was stone and wind and nothing else. The architect chosen was not a layman. Brother Elian Marek was a Benedictine monk and a trained structural mason. He'd worked on mission outposts in Africa, reconstruction, sites in Naples, a retreat in Oaxaca. He believed in sacred geometry, the alignment of faith and form. To him, stone was not dead, it was memory. The order gave him full control. No diocesan oversight, no funding restrictions. The only requirement, finish by Lent of the following year. Brother Marek arrived alone in December. The logging road leading up the cliff hadn't been used in a decade. His journal from the first night noted only 3 words: "The rock breathes." Construction began a week later. Supplies were driven in from Montpelier, hauled up by mule and cable. He lived on site in a trailer. There were no phones, no post, only the stone and his tools. The initial sketches showed a long nave, 1 bell, tower, a subterranean crypt. But over the next few weeks, something shifted. The plans changed, quietly. First, the tower doubled in height. Then the nave lengthened by 23 feet. Then came an annex, an octagonal chamber that hadn't appeared in any blueprint. When asked by the order to justify the expansion, Marek replied, "It's what the cliff allows." They didn't press. He was trusted. And donations had begun pouring in from anonymous benefactors. What no one knew then was that Marek had drawing entirely. Every revision was carved directly into the quarry wall with chalk and blade, sometimes at night, sometimes in the rain, always alone. Locals from the nearest county, 30 miles away, reported strange thunder echoing from the ridge. But there were no storms. A geologist from Dartmouth visited once in early February. He'd been hired to assess the stability of the foundation. He stayed for 6 hours, then left without his notes. He declined further contact and took a leave of absence from the university 3 days later. No explanation was ever given. By March, the skeleton of the chapel had risen tall, narrow, and off balance, as if leaning toward something unseen in the valley below. The walls were jet black slate, veined with green serpentine. The stone was quarried directly on site. Marek said the rock spoke clean, that it knew where it wanted to go. No one questioned it, because it worked. No structural errors, number, setbacks. Even the monastic tiling, intricate mosaic of interlocking hexagon, fit perfectly into place without measurement, like it had been waiting for someone to remember it. In Marek's journal, March 14th was circled in red. No text, just a smear, a fingerprint pressed into the page. No ink, just stone dust. He began sleeping in the unfinished chapel soon after, refused to use the trailer. He wrote that the air was warm inside, despite the frost. He began humming during his entries. The journal margins filled with shapes, curved, spined, always in 3s. Then something changed. The workers, 3 hired hands from a nearby town, quit on April 2nd. One left his boots behind. One refused payment. The third never spoke again, according to his sister. Just sat on the porch, rocking, whispering one phrase. "It's listening now." Still, Marek kept building. He wrote fewer words, more drawings, more circles, more dust. He didn't speak to the supply drivers. He didn't respond to letters. He wrote that the nave's acoustics were perfect, that a whisper could carry end to end, without effort. But something wasn't right. The bell tower was completed on April 19th. There was no bell. Still, it rang only once. Late in the night. He noted it in the margin. I did not imagine it. There were no animals near the ridge after that. The forest went still. No birds. No wind. Even the fog stopped moving. He carved the altar from a single slab of serpentine. 12 steps led up to it. None were planned. Above it, a vaulted arch spiraled inwards. Geometrically impossible, but somehow present. He stopped naming the rooms. Only called them the mouth, the throat, the listening room. By May 1st, the chapel was complete. The church sent a delegation to bless the site. 3 priests, 1 nun. They arrived mid-morning. The air smelled like ozone and old oil. They found Marek kneeling before the altar. His lips were moving, but he wasn't speaking Latin, nor any known language. And when they tried to approach, he opened his mouth, and no sound came out. Just dust, dry, slate-colored dust. They left before sundown. The blessing never happened. The chapel was locked, but not sealed. 6 weeks later, 12 monks would arrive to begin their silent retreat, and by winter, Brother Marek would vanish entirely. No trace, no grave. Only one final line in the final page of his journal. The stone remembers. The fog hadn't lifted in 3 days. It curled around the chapel like a second skin, blurring the stone edges, softening the air with a kind of wet silence. The forest beyond had turned darker, less present. And then from the mist they came, 12 men in black robes, each one barefoot, each one chosen. The Order of St. Joseph the Penitent had a rule: no more than 12 brothers in residence. Silence. Outside of prayer. 2 meals a day. No personal letters. And no clocks. They arrived in late spring. April 28th, 1963. Brother Marek was already gone. But the chapel stood finished, waiting, its black walls drinking the light. They found the interior. Pristine. Candles lined the nave, unburned. The altar was warm to the touch. There were no insects, no dust, only stillness. They began their vigil that night. Silent prayer at dusk. Meditation at dawn. 8 hours of labor in between. Gardening, masonry. WOODCUTTING. By the end of the first week, all 12 reported the same thing. No dreams. Not nightmares, not visions, just a void. Sleep came fast and left no trace. It was restful, but strange. And that's when they began to hum. It started with Brother Raphael during Compline. A low, tuneless sound that seemed almost unconscious. His lips stayed closed, but his throat vibrated gently. As though echoing something from far off. The others said nothing. But by the next evening, 3 more had joined in. It wasn't disruptive, not discordant, just present. Like the stone itself was carrying the sound. By the second week, it was all of them. A low droning harmony, swelling just beneath the chants. The prior, Father Melchior, made no record of it in the chapel logs, but he did write one private note. It feels right, like the chapel is singing with us. That entry was dated the 14th night. By the 21st, the humming had grown louder, still unconscious, still unacknowledged. But now it reverberated in the walls. Visitors. Rare, as they were. Said, they felt it in their feet, like standing on an organ. Pipe, like the sound was underneath everything. But the brothers insisted they heard nothing unusual. When played recordings of their prayers, they reacted with confusion. "We don't sound like that," one said. "That's not us." But it was, and the pitch was rising. On the 28th night, the fog returned, thicker now, pressed against the stained glass like breath on cold glass. The bells. Though never rung. Chimed once at midnight. No wind, no cause. The logs show nothing that week. Only a blank page. Then came the 33rd night. All 12 monks awoke at once. Not from a noise, not from movement. but as if summoned, they rose from their beds in perfect unison and began to chant. There was no sheet music, no script, no words they'd ever learned, but the harmony was perfect. 12 voices, layered and shifting, pauses timed like breath, like language, except no one could understand it, not even them. The sound filled every chamber, every hallway, a single unbroken liturgy. From midnight until dawn, none of them remembered it, not in the morning, not ever. They woke with sore throats, their beds still warm, their candles long burned down. When asked by Father Melchior if anyone had left their quarters, they all said no. Their voices were hoarse, their eyes ringed with red, but none felt fear. Not yet. It was Brother Enel who found the tapes. The chapel had an old reel-to-reel recorder mounted above the nave. It ran nightly to document the prayers. But when he played the recording from the 33rd night, he collapsed. The others found him trembling beneath the altar, nose bleeding, mouth open in, a silent scream. He lived, but never spoke again. Not a single word. The tape was reviewed once more, this time by Father Melchior and Brother Jonas. They listened in private for only 2 minutes. Then they destroyed the reel. They said nothing to the others, but they sealed the recording room with stone and wax. The following day, the humming stopped entirely. The brothers tried to resume their normal rhythm. Prayers, meals, work, but something had changed. They began reporting migraines, flashes of light behind their eyelids, a pressure behind the eyes. When they entered the nave, they removed the candles, but the scent of wax remained. The silence felt different now, like it was holding its breath. One morning, Brother Tomas forgot his own name. Not from age, not from illness. It just vanished. They wrote to the diocese. No reply came. The prior logged his final entry 3 days later. We keep vigil, but something is watching back. No monk ever left the chapel after that. Not alive. Not whole. Can in the corner of the vestry, etched shallow into the slate wall, barely visible unless the light hits just right, are 12 marks. One for each brother. Not carved with a blade, not scratched with stone. But melted. As if the wall had softened for them. And somewhere, beneath that stone, the humming waits. The reel spun slowly, tape hissing like a distant, whined through static. The chapel's audio room was dark, lit only by a single red bulb above the recorder. The walls were lined in thick black foam, meant to suppress echoes. But something kept getting in. After the incident on the 33rd night, most of the tapes were destroyed. The prior had ordered it quietly. No ceremony, no record, but 3 reels survived, locked in a steel drawer, sealed with wax. One of them was dated May 18th, 5 days after the chanting. Brother Jonas was the first to listen. He didn't tell the others. He wanted to understand. The tape began like the others. Low prayer, 12 voices in unison, rhythmic, familiar, but beneath the Latin, something moved. It wasn't words, not exactly. Not quite a voice, but close. A second layer of sound, like breath-forming syllables that didn't belong to any known tongue. They rose and fell in counterpoint to the chant. Perfectly timed, yet never overlapping. Each sound arrived in the silence between words. He rewound the tape, played it again. This time, he heard it clearly. A voice, not human, not electronic. Something deep, dry, older than anything he'd heard. It didn't interrupt. It waited. It answered. That night, Jonas couldn't sleep. He stayed in the vestry, pacing, hands shaking, mouth dry. By dawn, he told the prior. 3 more brothers listened to the tape the next day, each separately, each in silence. None of them spoke afterward, not to each other, not in prayer. They simply sat in the refectory, staring at their hands, as though remembering something they'd never been taught. The prior sent a letter to the diocesan office, requesting academic assistance. He didn't mention possession, didn't say demonic, didn't say blasphemous. Just one line. Language not of origin. Confirmation requested. 3 weeks later, Rome responded. The Vatican dispatched a linguist. Father Luca Andretti, a Jesuit scholar fluent in 17 languages, doctor of philology, specialist in early Semitic phonetics. He arrived on June 12th, tired but curious. He wore a wide-brimmed hat, carried a leather satchel filled with notebooks and rosary beads, and a tape player he refused to let anyone else touch. He spent his first day reviewing chapel blueprints, marked architectural anomalies in the nave's curvature, noted that the angles of the choir stalls seemed to create an unintentional resonance point, a frequency trap. By nightfall, he had already requested access to the sealed recordings. Permission was granted. He listened once, then again. By the third playthrough, he began transcribing, but not in Latin, not in Greek, in a strange hybrid of cuneiform, Hebrew root syllables, and something else. He worked through the night. No rest, no food. When asked if he needed assistance, he shook his head. It's not a language, he said. It's memory. He claimed the tape contained phonetic recursion, sounds looping inside themselves, like an echo that remembered being spoken. He said the voice wasn't speaking to the monks. It was using them, like strings on a harp, each vowel shaping their breath in patterns they never learned. By day 3, he stopped writing. He said the symbols no longer held meaning, that he could feel the phrases now, in his teeth, in his jaw. That's when he locked himself in the chapel overnight. They found him the next morning, lying beneath the altar, arms outstretched, eyes open, mouth frozen mid-word. He was alive, but didn't move. The brothers carried him to the infirmary. His pulse was steady, but he didn't blink, didn't speak, didn't sleep. They fed him broth through a cloth, washed his hands, changed his robes, but he never stirred. On the 7th night, he rose on his own, walked barefoot to the vestibule, paused by the sealed audio room, placed his hand against the door, and whispered something no one understood. He left the monastery before dawn. No explanation, no goodbye. He walked 7 miles to the forest's edge and disappeared. His satchel was found later beneath the chapel's east pew. Inside, a torn page, 12 lines of script, drawn in circles, each sentence leading into the next. None could be translated. Linguists from 3 universities were consulted. One described the symbols as pre-phonetic architecture. Another refused to comment. A third wept during review. The Vatican declared the text apocryphal, cautioned discretion, advised silence. The chapel resumed its prayers, but the voice remained not always heard, but felt in the quiet spaces between chants, in the walls after midnight, in the breath of the stone itself. And to this day, no known language has matched the sound. Because it didn't come from us. It came through. The tree line ends suddenly. Then drops. Sharp granite ledges open like broken teeth, curling around the chapel below. A dark shape tucked into the hillside, wrapped in fog, waiting. It looks smaller from above, darker too, as though the stone no longer reflects light. By the end of 1963, the chapel of St. Joseph the Penitent had accepted its first postulants. Not just monks now, but visitors, retreatants, volunteers, clergy from other orders. They came in silence, in groups of 3, in pairs, sometimes alone. Each was registered through the diocese. Each signed a simple document for silence, prayer, and service. Some were young, most were devout, many were tired. They came to rest, and one by one, they stayed. The records list them. Names, dates, origin parishes, all neatly logged. Then, one word beside each entry, transferred. At first, no one questioned it. Transfers were common, temporary vows, monks moving between orders. But as the years passed, something shifted. Between 1963 and 1968, 47 people entered the chapel. None returned. By 1970, the number reached 90. Still no funerals, No burial records. No forwarding addresses. Letters to family members were rare. When they arrived, they were typed. No signatures. No return contact. Some said the letters read, like dictation, too formal, too distant. I have found peace in prayer. Please do not visit. Please do not send anything further. Always the same words. Always the same format. But something wasn't right. A mother in Baltimore petitioned the archdiocese after her daughter a novice named Sister Elianne ... writing. She was told the girl had entered contemplative silence. No further explanation was given. When she arrived in Vermont unannounced, she was stopped halfway up the road by two men in plainclothes. They asked for her name, then told her the chapel was closed, under quarantine. A gas leak, they said. She returned home, filed a missing persons report. Nothing came of it. Her daughter's name was later listed in diocesan ledgers as transferred Order of Silence, an order that did not exist. Others tried to visit. A priest from Quebec, a brother from Indiana, a former postulant's father. Each time, the result was the same. The road was closed, or washed out, or under federal review. Always a reason, always temporary, but it never reopened. Inside the chapel, the silence grew heavier. The monks ... what few remained from the original 12 ... spoke less, wrote less, prayed longer. Visitors were no longer listed by name, only by number. A simple date of arrival, no departure. Then, in 1973, it accelerated. 40-7 new entries in 6 months. Only 6 were clergy. The rest were lay people. No formal ties. No vows. Some had no records at all. No known family. No trace of origin. They came, and they disappeared. The church stopped responding to inquiries. Letters to the diocese were returned unopened. The Bishop of Burlington resigned without explanation in November of that year. His successor, Bishop Renzetti, refused to acknowledge the chapel in any formal address. He called it a matter under review. The logbook ... preserved years later by a journalist ... reveals a simple, chilling truth. Between 1963 and 1977, 241 people entered the chapel. None were ever seen again. Not alive, not buried, not confirmed dead. No wills executed, no estates settled, no official obituaries. Just a ledger. And one repeating word, transferred, but the rooms had no locks, no fences, no walls deep enough to hide 241 people. The grounds were small, 2 levels, 1 crypt, 1 bell tower, a library, a refectory, even sealed. The chapel could not hold that many. And yet, no one ever came back out. That no complaints were filed, no scandals surfaced, no bodies were found. Just one curious pattern. Each time the number of residents approached 13, someone new arrived, and someone old vanished. Like a balance was being kept, maintained, fed. One former groundskeeper ... Louis Trenton ... worked near the base of the ridge, cleared brush, trimmed trails. He said he saw trucks, sometimes ... unmarked, no lights, driving slowly at night. Once he heard voices ... soft, rhythmic voices ... chanting from beneath the earth. But the chapel was dark, the windows cold. He never told anyone. Until years later, he was found in 1986, sitting in the woods near the old trailhead, mumbling to himself, his mouth full of pine needles. His hands traced circles into the dirt. He repeated a phrase for hours before going silent. They go down singing. Every time. They go down singing. In 1977, the disappearances stopped abruptly. No more entries. No more transfers. No new names in the ledger. The chapel doors were chained shut by state order. The official reason, foundation instability. But no survey was ever filed. No repair crews dispatched. The entire site was declared restricted. To this day, No grave has been uncovered. No remains are covered. No documentation of last rites. The Vatican has never acknowledged the location by name, only refers to it as the anomalous site in Vermont. And families ... those who still remember ... are advised not to return. Some still receive letters, blank envelopes, no postage, no markings, inside, slips of paper, printed phrases. All is well. We are still praying. Do not look back. But the ink doesn't match any modern press. The paper doesn't fade, and the words, they hum ... quietly ... when you're alone, when it's dark, when you begin to forget the names of the people who went in, because something remembered them and isn't finished yet. The road into Brattle Hollow is narrow. One lane of cracked blacktop curled between trees that haven't moved in a century. The mist arrives before dawn and never fully leaves . It was early September, 1975, a Sunday. The air was still wet with the night's rain . At 5:42 a.m., the town's only crossing guards saw her first. A figure at the edge of the woods, barefoot, limping down the embankment, head tilted forward, hair soaked, clothes torn and blackened, like they'd been buried. She wasn't local, and she wasn't lost. She didn't ask for help. She didn't speak. She just kept walking, straight down the center of Main Street. The patrolman who stopped her later said it felt like interrupting a sermon, that there was a rhythm to the way she moved. 4 steps, pause, murmur, repeat, and then he noticed her eyes, completely black. No whites, no iris, no light, just void. She wasn't blind. She tracked movement, watched his hand reach for the radio . And that's when she spoke. Not English, not Latin, a fractured string of syllables, ... low, urgent, rising. The local priest was called from his rectory, Father Callum, 64 years old, retired from field missions. Hadn't heard a confession in months. He arrived 10 minutes later. She was sitting on the curb outside the post office, whispering into her lap. When he spoke her name ... Adalia? She stopped. Her head rose. Her lips stilled. Her eyes didn't blink. She spoke again, this time in fragments. One word the priest recognized, Maranatha, an Aramaic invocation. Come, Lord. But the rest, he recorded it in a notebook, or tried to. The spelling shifted. The structure collapsed. Linguists would later identify the fragments as Proto-Nahuatl, but broken, bent, words layered together in ways that defied grammar, as if 2 languages were folding into each other, overlaying, merging. He asked where she came from. She replied with something that sounded like beneath, then added, the chapel has no bottom. She refused water, refused blankets. Her body was freezing. Skin damp, hands shaking. But she showed no pain. 6:13 a.m. She stood, turned to the east, and began to pray. No one recognized the posture. It wasn't Catholic, wasn't Muslim, wasn't Jewish. It was something older, something carved into temple floors before books remembered their gods. She stayed there for 27 minutes, then collapsed. When the EMTs arrived, her skin had turned gray-blue. Her temperature had dropped below 88 degrees. Still no pulse. Still no breath, but her mouth was moving, not wide, not loud. Just barely. A whisper, soft enough to miss ... unless you leaned in. One medic did. He said it didn't sound like words, more like stone on stone. A grinding, a shaping. They rushed her to Brattle Hollow General. She died before admission. No cause listed, just heart failure, no trauma, no visible injury. But the coroner made one note, that her lungs were dry, utterly dry, as though she hadn't breathed in days. The hospital listed her as Jane Doe, but Father Callum knew better. 2 days later, he contacted a seminary in Montreal, sent her photograph, a dental description. They responded within hours. Sister Adalia, Lords, Order of St. Joseph the Penitent, transferred to contemplative silence in 1972. Location, unknown. She had been gone for 3 years, declared uncontactable, her family told not to inquire, and now she was back, for a moment, a nun, who returned from a chapel no one left. The church sent representatives a week later. They took the body. No autopsy. No death certificate released. The town was asked not to speak to press. A donation was made to the hospital. Father Callum was reassigned, but whispers remained. One nurse kept her chart. One local boy kept a cassette. Tape of her voice ... recorded secretly from the clinic hall ... It plays no words. Just a rising tone, low, unbroken ... when amplified. It forms a pulse, a pattern, 3 beats. Silence, 3 beats. A pause. Then something deeper ... buried in the static. A second voice. Not hers. Never hers ... It says one phrase. Not in any human tongue, but when slowed, translated phonetically, it maps to a single repeating sentence. She was never meant to return. And in the basement of the Brattle Hollow Rectory, sealed behind plaster, a fragment of her habit remains. The threadwork stitched in red, untranslated, fused into the fabric like molten wire ... as though it had been. Branded with sound, not written, not sewn ... spoken, into being ... the earth around St. Yusuf never settled. The fog didn't lift, the trees didn't grow, and the ground itself seemed to hold its breath ... in 1978. A year after the chapel was sealed, the state commissioned a geological survey. Officially, it was to assess risk, an aging structure, foundational decay, potential sinkholes. But unofficially, they were looking for graves. What they found instead was space. The team consisted of 4 men, 2 geophysicists, 1 surveyor, 1 technician. They arrived with drills, seismographs, and a ground-penetrating radar array packed in a steel truck. Their equipment was standard. Their expectations were modest. The chapel sat on solid granite, or so they assumed. The first scan returned normal, flat strata, some fault lines. But the second sweep ... beneath the crypt ... showed an anomaly. A void, roughly 60 meters wide, perfectly spherical. The data was rerun 3 times. The technician replaced the array. Same result. A hollow sphere beneath the stone. No known entrances. No tunnels. No water movement ... And then the heat signature. From 40 meters down, a faint warmth radiated outward. Not hot, not volcanic, just warm ... like breath. They drilled at dawn. A small bore ... no wider than a pencil ... just above the void's edge. The stone was oddly soft. Each rotation felt damp, resistant, and yielding ... at 17 meters, the bit slowed. At 28, the readings shifted. The stone began to vibrate, rhythmically, once every 6 seconds. A low pulse, like a heartbeat. The geophysicist, Dr. Caleb Rowan, recorded it, then noted something strange. Each pulse wasn't consistent. It shifted ... slightly, ... like breath catching in a throat. Like inhalation. At 39 meters, the drill reached the shell. It was smooth, not like stone, not like clay, almost organic, grayish black, pliable, glossy. They paused drilling, lowered a fiber optic scope. The camera showed only darkness. Until the 3rd minute, a shape passed beneath the lens. Not fast, not close, but something moved. A curve, a shimmer, then gone. They watched in silence. And one of them, James Del Rey, the junior tech, removed his headphones. His face was pale, eyes wide. "Do you hear that?" he said. No one else heard anything. Then Rowan pressed his headset against the drill housing and froze. There was a sound, not loud, not a rumble, a tone, long, soft, rising, descending, repeating. It didn't match the drill, didn't match any mechanical vibration. It was coming from the stone. They increased the audio gain, routed the signal through the recorder. Then someone said it ... quietly. It's a voice. Not human, not verbal, but structured. Timed ... like someone whispering through a wall. The team debated halting the operation, but protocol demanded they confirm the void's boundary. They drilled again ... 3 more centimeters. That's when the pulse stopped, just for a moment. A silence so total it made the air feel heavier, like everything had exhaled and decided not to breathe again. Then the sound returned, but this time it screamed ... no build-up, no warning, just a single agonizing burst of frequency ... too high to process, too low to ignore. James Del Rey dropped instantly. Hands clamped over his ears, nails digging in, blood pouring from between his fingers. The others rushed to restrain him, but by the time they pried his hands away, both ears were gone. The second to fall was Victor Komeski. No scream, just stillness. He stood, turned, and slammed his head against the edge of the steel truck ... twice. 3 times. He didn't stop until he collapsed. Rowan cut the drill. The sound vanished, but the damage was done. Both men were airlifted to St. Vincent's Hospital in Montpelier. Del Rey survived ... Komeski died on arrival. The official report cites extreme vibrational feedback, unshielded equipment, human error. But the third man ... surveyor, Mark Hensley ... left a different record. He mailed his notes to a friend in Ohio 2 days later, unfiltered, unedited, 30 pages of typed observation. One passage stands out. It wasn't noise, it was invitation. Something new. We touched it. It called out ... instinctively ... like a reflex. Not hate, not pain, just awareness. Like we brushed against something dreaming. He resigned 2 weeks later, moved to Alaska, died in a boating accident in 1982, but one part of the survey was never released. The final GPR scan, recovered from Rowan's personal archive in 1994. It shows the sphere, clear, unbroken. But now, something else. A second shape inside it. Not stone, not air, elongated, curved, positioned vertically, ... like a figure, not moving, but breathing. The pulse resumed after the drill stopped. Slower now, deeper ... like something had noticed ... and for the next 7 days, the chapel's foundation grew warm. Not the air, not the surface ... the stone, the walls, the altar, the floor beneath the nave. Everything pulsed ... and the choir stalls ... long since empty ... began to hum ... no power, no presence, just the memory of voices, filling a space they never truly left, and something beneath them, waiting to rise. The papal archives beneath San Callisto are colder than most realize, not from lack of heat, but because stone remembers silence. In early 1981, the Holy Office convened in private. A brief session, no press, no public minutes. One item on the docket, entry #47-B ... site of clerical misrecording. Vermont. Official language, sanitized, deliberately vague. They never said chapel, never said disappearance, only referred to the structure as a failed outpost. But behind the phrasing, something had changed. Reports from the American diocese were no longer ignored. They were collected, sorted, then sealed. All requests for investigation were quietly rerouted. Seminary records deleted, names removed from ordination lists. The ledgers no longer matched the memories. In February of that year, Bishop Elias Ferenc of New Hampshire submitted a written testimony, 3 pages, handwritten, stamped with his personal seal. It contained no accusations, no theories. Just facts. I have walked the perimeter. I have heard the stones breathe. I have seen a woman who no longer knew the shape of language. And at the end, if this is not a place of God, then it is something far older. The letter was never acknowledged. 2 weeks later, Ferenc booked a flight to Rome. He carried with him a brown leather folder. Inside, photographs, handwritten maps, translations from Sister Adalia's tape, and a copy of the borehole scan. He never made it to the Vatican. Records from the Rome airport show he cleared customs at 7:48 p.m. Surveillance footage ends there. There is no documentation of where he stayed, no credit cards used, no passport activity. He was never seen again. The folder was never recovered. At a press conference a month later, a cardinal was asked if the church planned to reopen the Vermont chapel site. He smiled. There is no such site. One journalist persisted. Asking if the Holy See had received reports about a sphere beneath the structure. The room went silent, and the spokesman stepped forward and delivered a single phrase: "The church does not concern itself with minor clerical anomalies." That term, minor clerical anomaly, it began to appear in letters, in theological correspondence, in diocesan memos. It became a catch-all, a code, a dismissal. One seminary professor in Lyon was removed from his post after referencing it in a lecture. He'd shown students a diagram of acoustically resonant chapels. St. Joseph was circled in red. He said, quote, "Not all prayers echo, some listen." He was dismissed within the week. The Holy Office then issued Instruction 402M, a short document distributed internally. No public record. It stated, "Any location exhibiting traits of recursive liturgical behavior, psychological dissolution, or geographic discrepancy is to be sealed, recorded, and reclassified under status dormant." Status dormant, a phrase that doesn't exist in canon law and has no clear definition, but files marked dormant disappear. One Vatican archivist. Who later leaked portions of 402M. Described it this way: "They are places where doctrine breaks down, where theology becomes topography, where belief bends stone." He was found dead in his apartment the following month. No sign of forced entry. No note. Only his computer. Wiped clean, but someone recovered fragments. Metadata. The last document opened was titled, "List of Dormant Sites, Western Hemisphere." There were 5 names. 4 were redacted. One was not. St. Joseph the Penitent. Latitude and longitude coordinates were attached. And beneath that, a single line of text: "Do not excavate. Do not engage. Do not speak the name." In 1983, a new chapel registry was printed. St. Joseph was not listed, not as active, not as defunct. It had been erased. And yet, pilgrims still come. Not in groups, not announced, but once or twice a year, someone walks the trail. Old maps, old names, they find nothing. A concrete seal, a rusted chain, a silence so total it hurts the ears. And sometimes. Just once, they say they hear something. Not a voice, not a chant, just a low sound, like stone breathing in rhythm, like memory waiting for its name. And the church still calls it a clerical error, a misfiled chapter, but the earth beneath it has not stopped humming. The altar had long since collapsed, stone cracked in 6 places, the floor beneath it stained with age and dust, but something remained, a single page, curled inward at the edges, darkened by time, protected somehow. Untouched by moisture, by weather, by decay. Father Renaud found it in late autumn of 1981. He had come alone, no Vatican sanction, no blessing. Just a silent, private compulsion to walk where others refused, to kneel in the place where 241 had vanished, and where one psalm had never been heard. He saw the paper beneath a pile of broken pew fragments, tucked against the base of the altar's southern leg. It wasn't hidden. It was waiting. He reached down, touched it, and stopped breathing. The page was warm, not hot, not cold, just alive, like it had been held seconds earlier, like it had just been written. But no pen could have made these marks. The characters bled together. Dozens of alphabets, stacked, merged, bent, Greek twisted into Hebrew, Arabic curled around Cyrillic, Coptic symbols etched beneath forgotten runes. Entire sections of glyphs he couldn't place. Every line was impossibly precise. Not handwritten, but neither printed, like the language had grown from the fibers of the paper itself. He didn't understand it. Not a single word, but he couldn't look away. Later, he would say the script gave the impression of movement, not literal, not pulsing ... That reading it felt like listening to someone breathe. A month later, in a locked room at a retreat center in Ontario, Father Renaud brought the page before a small group. 4 priests, 1 linguist, 1 former cantor. No audience, no recorders, no names. He didn't ask for permission. He simply began to speak. The sounds came slowly, first stammered, broken ... then smoother ... The words didn't match the page, at least not visually, but each syllable he spoke matched a shape, a curl, a mark, as if the paper had always been meant to be sung. The cantor began to weep ... then the linguist, then the others. One collapsed to his knees. Another whispered the name of his mother, a name he hadn't said since he was a child. None of them understood the words. None could translate a single line, but the emotion was exact, crushing. Holy ... They all said the same thing. It wasn't beautiful. It was true. The melody defied memory. No one could replicate it. Not precisely. Not fully. They tried. They recorded it. But the tape warped. Each playback sounded slightly off, faster, lower, and unintelligible. Within 3 days, the magnetic ribbon disintegrated. The page itself was stored in a sealed glass case. But even that began to shift. After 1 week, a thin fog formed inside the casing. Not condensation, not heat. It smelled faintly of salt and blood. On the 7th night, the case cracked. Not from pressure, from inside. Renaud never touched the page again. He reported it to a Jesuit contact in Boston. It was taken into custody under document class, non-replicable liturgical artifact, stored, then hidden. All further access required written permission from the Holy Office. The cantor, who had wept ... later returned to his synagogue, but stopped singing. He said music no longer felt like language. He described it as trying to imitate breath with a dead throat. The linguist was committed 2 months later. He had begun scribbling symbols in his sleep, backwards, into the pages of books he couldn't read. The ink he used wasn't ink. It was ash. And something else. Father Renaud went silent. He refused interviews, declined transfer. He would walk the perimeter of the chapel ruins each evening, always clockwise, always humming. No one recognized the tune, but he claimed it helped him sleep. Before he died in 1997, he left behind a note. 1 page, handwritten, folded neatly beside the original document. Now locked in a Vatican vault. His words. We're taught that the Psalms are for God. This one wasn't. It was never meant for heaven. It was meant to be heard, and once heard, it finishes itself. No new copies were ever made. No transcriptions. No academic study. But in one seminary in rural Spain, a student reported something unusual. Each night at 3:33 a.m., the libraries, lower floor echoes, not footsteps, not whispers. Singing. Low, layered, like dozens of voices. Weeping in unison. The song was never published, but some say it continues, even without a reader, even without the page. A song that doesn't end, because it never began. It was always there, just waiting to be remembered. The wind doesn't move right here. It circles. It holds its breath, then exhales in strange directions. Above the chapel, the trees grow at a slant, bending subtly eastward, as if drawn or dragged. There is no trail marker anymore, no signage, just a narrow break in the brush, and a sound, a hum that doesn't echo, low, paced, like breath under pressure. The slab was poured in 1986, 20 feet thick, steel reinforced, stamped with an anonymous municipal seal. No plaque, no explanation. To the eye, it's just concrete, cracked, with frost, veined with moss, framed by pine and shadow. But to the ear, it's different. Hikers don't come here on purpose. The slope is steep, the ground is soft, and the trees above seem to lean the wrong way. But once every few months, someone finds it. A student, a traveler, a pair of campers looking for sky, and they all describe the same thing. I thought it was wind at first. It was just under the surface of hearing, like voices ... but too deep to understand. The sounds start when you stop walking, when your breath calms, when you forget where you are. Then it comes, not loud, not sudden, just there, a tone beneath language, layered, like multiple mouths forming a word they haven't decided on yet. Most leave. They feel it in the bones, that pressure behind the eyes, that thrum in the back of the jaw. But some stay, some kneel, some listen, and that's when they hear it clearly. It wasn't a word, it was recognition, like something remembering me. In 1994, a retired park ranger named Harlan Whitmore came forward. He'd worked the Green Mountain backwoods for 22 years. He knew the land, the rivers, the silence, but there was one place he never returned to after. 1979, the chapel site. He never gave interviews, never spoke to press, but in a handwritten letter, later published posthumously, he described a walk in late spring. There was fog, no trail that day. I saw prints ... bare feet, small, maybe a woman. They led to the concrete, but they didn't stop. They just ended. Half a step from the edge, there was no mud that day, no snow, no runoff. It was as if she walked straight through it, like the slab wasn't there, or like she wasn't. Rangers later poured plaster into the last visible print. The mold hardened, but the shape was odd. Not just toes, not just skin, veins, etched like tree roots ... too deep to be real . It was never displayed. It cracked in storage. The fragment was thrown away. Today, hikers report the air is wrong near the site. It's thicker, like walking into the deep end of a pool, like the woods are pressing in, just waiting for you to blink. And then the sound. Some record it. Most hear nothing on playback, but a few clips exist ... audible, until they're slowed down. Then something emerges. Breaths, not synchronized, but collective. A choir inhaling between stanzas. Once, in 2009, a field recorder, left overnight, picked up 6 hours of ambient hum. The next morning, the device was warm to the touch. The memory card warped, but one portion remained. At 3:03 a.m., a voice, barely more than a whisper, almost childlike, speaking slowly. 3 words, untranslated. The linguist who reviewed it said they didn't match any known structure, but their rhythm matched something else. The cadence of early Christian psalms, specifically laments, songs for the dead. And beneath that, a breath, long, deliberate, as if the stone had lungs. Today, most maps don't show the chapel site. The land is marked as unclaimed woodland. No coordinates, no photos, but people still go. One Reddit thread describes a man who stood on the slab and wept for no reason. Another mentions a dog that refused to go near the clearing. Tail down, teeth bared. And in one thread, quickly deleted, someone claimed they stood on the concrete for 30 minutes. Silent, still. I tried to pray, but something finished. The sentence for me, no names, no location. But the rhythm of these stories doesn't change. Something remains, not alive, not dead. Just waiting. A pressure below the ground, a mouth that never stopped moving. And though the chapel is gone, its language continues, sung by wind, carried by silence, remembered by stone. Where tongues still echo, and the breath of forgotten prayer never truly ends. There is a kind of stillness only stone can hold, a silence pressed deep enough to bend memory, a breath too slow to measure in years, only in patterns, in instinct, in the pull of a place you've never seen, but feel you were meant to. They said the chapel was sacred, chosen by divine geometry, aligned with the stars, a beacon for the devout. But that was never true. The foundation was not poured on holy ground. It was built to cover something, not a relic, not a saint's bones, but a hollow space. Already alive. In 1993, a private memo surfaced. Sent from a French archivist to a Vatican liaison. Its contents were never officially acknowledged, but a fragment remains. It read, "This is not a site of worship. This is a lid." He was referring to the borehole scan. The same that showed the pulsing chamber beneath the altar. The rock formation wasn't natural. It was spherical, perfect, 60 meters across, hollow inside, lined with mineral sheens that no geologist could classify. But what disturbed them wasn't the shape. It was the resonance. When tapped, the inner wall produced a tone. Deep, sustained, and intelligent. Not random, not echo. A sound that held structure. A kind of response. One engineer wrote, "It felt like something answering a question I hadn't asked." And beneath that. A second tone. Lower, too low for human ears. They caught it only through equipment. A frequency sustained for 33 minutes. And then gone. No one was allowed to drill further. But one did. Unrecorded. Unauthorized. Alone. Brother. Oling. A geophysicist turned monk. He believed the chapel was not corrupt, but incomplete. That its language was a kind of invitation. Or warning. He set sensors into the borehole during the night. No one knew. No one stopped him. By morning, he was gone. His room undisturbed. His notes missing. Only the drill remained. Bent at the tip. Steel warped. Melted from the inside out. The stone beneath had not resisted. It had absorbed. The church called it an accident. Heat exposure. Equipment failure. But the borehole was sealed with concrete the next day. No explanation, no ceremony. There was something deeper than theology buried here, and it wasn't dormant. Years later, one fragment of Elaine's personal journal surfaced. Torn from the back cover of a hymnal. 6 lines. It remembers the mouth before we spoke. It knows the shape of fear before it was named. The chapel does not pray. It listens. It does not bless. It recalls. No more pages were ever found. Some now believe the chapel was not designed as a sanctuary, but as a conduit or a translation device, something that turns sound into structure, emotion into stone. Not for human ears, but for something beneath listening, something old enough to forget what a body is, but not what a voice feels like. A 2006 classified geological report. Declassified in error. Listed the Vermont site under a new term, cognitive lithostructure. Translation: stone that reacts to thought. It had no precedent, no context, but the theory was simple. Some formations, under rare conditions, could imprint human emotion, not like a tape, not a ghost, but more like a mirror, bent, distorted, reflecting things we never meant to say out loud. In this theory, the chapel wasn't cursed. It wasn't haunted. It was responsive. It took what was given, faith, fear, grief, and returned it. Multiplied. Some believe the original architect, or the Marek, didn't design the chapel at all. He decoded it. He claimed the stone spoke to him, that the plans were already there. Waiting. He simply listened long enough. Something wasn't right, because buried in the lines of the original blueprint, between the measurements and renderings, were marks, notations, not in ink, not in his hand, etched, pressed from beneath. Words no one could translate, but when viewed under UV light, they pulsed. A sequence, a psalm, written before alphabets, had names. The document was burned in 1987, ordered by the diocesan office. No copies remain, but the shape of the chapel endures, not in stone, not in record. In dreams, a handful of former workers have reported recurring images. A round chamber, walls that breathe, A single note, held for years. And the sensation of being remembered. Not seen, not judged, not just. We called Dot as if the stone itself knew their name. Not the one they were given, but the one they carried before they knew how to speak it. The final theory is simple, terrifying, and maybe true, that the chapel was not a place of worship, not a monument, but a capstone, a name tag for something older than belief, a shape that remembers the feel of prayer, even before we had gods, even before we had language, something buried, not to contain it, but to mark it, so it could continue listening. And beneath it all, a voice still humming, still shaping silence, not waiting to be worshipped, only to be understood. Perhaps not all voices are meant to be understood. Some speak only so we remember how small we are. 241 names. No bodies, no graves, only echoes. But if you stand close enough, you may hear your own name among them. Teaser line, and just 200 miles south, another church was built by the same architect. It too has no windows, and no one has come out since 1986.